Very excited to finally get here. Obviously, been a long time coming, but to finally arrive and get into a game week preparation is awesome. We were actually allowed to have a little bit of a bonus day yesterday because of the NCAA rules. Class didn't start till today, so we got a little bit of time on the grass yesterday. Had a chance to continue to work our install for Nebraska. Before we get into Nebraska, I did want to comment publicly. I haven't been able to comment since obviously we named our captains, and those 6 guys, since the time I've arrived to where we are today, have been absolutely awesome to work with. On the defense side of the ball, jumped out right away. Tony Adams is probably one of the first defensive players I met with face to face. He was trying to decide what to do from that point moving forward, had a draft grade and all that stuff that went into it, and locked in with me and Coach Walters quite a bit, and took him a while to come to the decision, but since he's come back, he's just been absolutely awesome, not just with obviously his class and his own well-being, but he's been awesome with our underclassmen. Just a guy that's been buy-in. Him and Owen Carney both have truly been just really engaged with what we're doing schematically, but also engaged with what we're doing off the field and all types of leadership. I think those 2 guys have grown quite a bit since we've been here. And then obviously Jake Hansen was kind of a unique story in the fact that he declared to come out and then came back, and I still give a lot of credit to our administration, our compliance office, to get that waiver to come through and be eligible to play here in this home opener. Those 3 guys defensively, and then on the offensive side, been able to talk about Kramer obviously with B1G, but media days. But Velo has been, a guy that's impressive on film. I think will probably be one of the guys that takes the biggest jumps in his level of play in this fall camp to see where he's at. And then the 6th captain, by no means any less, Blake Hayes, has just been truly one of the true joys to be around since I've been here. He gets the game, obviously a foreign-born Australian guy, but he understands American football very, very well. He's even said some things to me schematically that I've never had a specialist say to me. He just gets the game and understands it at a high level. So to have those 6 guys kind of leading our charge as captains has been awesome. As far as the status for our players, I'm not going to put out an official depth chart since I know I made a comment, obviously, a couple weeks back. Only about half the league is going to put out a depth chart, and we're going to be in the half that does not at this point. Just going into this game, what we're able to do and how we're able to do it, I feel it's in our best interest to kind of stay in that neutral mode. So I will say that obviously there's guys that are going to start, right? Like the 6 captains I just named off are going to be guys that probably are going to be starters. Brandon Peters will be our QB1 for sure, coming under center that first snap and do a lot of good things hopefully with that group. But for the most part, injury-wise, the only guy that's officially ruled out for the game is Beeson. He won't be able to join us for this game, but he has accelerated his healing process to be with us, hopefully, if not in time for UTSA for that Virginia game. So he's kind of made a turn for the better. I'll give a lot of credit to our strength and conditioning as well as our athletic training room staff have done a really good job. It's been a tough fall camp, and the guys have stayed relatively healthy and put themselves in a good position to hopefully have their best week of preparation yet going into the opener. So a lot of other things going on, obviously, in the outside world within our conference and things like that. I really don't know anything. I've been to my nose down to the grindstone working on Nebraska preparation, but one thing I do know coming back into this league, the leadership that I had experienced in this conference prior to me coming, and then especially since coming back, and the administration here on campus with Josh and his crew in the Big Ten Conference is second to none. So I'm just kind of waiting patiently to find out everything that will be coming in the next few days, few weeks, whatever it is, and continue to just tell me the rules and I'll play by them. So that's kind of where we're at on all those issues. With that, I'll open up for questions.
For how big an impact will that Big Ten rule mean if you can't play to forfeit? How do you share that?
Tremendous, huge outfit. It's something I'm very conscious of. You might notice I'm a little nasally, right? I escaped some allergies, I thought, when I was back in Provincetown, Illinois, and I thought it was because I went to school somewhere else and outgrew them. But since coming back to Illinois, I've had my share of allergies flare back up. But, the first thing that pops in all of our players' minds is anytime anybody gets a little bit sick, we actually have only 3 players now in our entire program that won't have their second shot by Saturday. And of those 3 players, they're players that aren't in our 2 deep. So the majority, obviously everybody else in our program is good to go. The 3 players that aren't vaccinated, they'll actually do all meetings, and anything in the building is done remote. So they would, our players and coaches will be connected through Zoom to them. But other than that, we're just kind of going through our business as university protocol and making it happen from there.
Bret,
It's all right, I'll let you go.
in-state recruiting was a focus for you. Did you expect it to go this well? I know you can only speak in generalities, but what do you think has been successful with you guys?
I give a lot of credit to the first conversations I had with Josh and Warren after I took this job was to, capture the state, and they had the idea to contact a half a dozen coaches right the very first day when I'm standing in the hotel room in New Jersey. Reached out to several coaches, and it hasn't changed since that point, right? Like one of the true benefits to taking this job that I had no idea would be such a huge positive. I mean, I knew it from the state and everything that goes into it, but knowing the land, just the landscape of Illinois, knowing what Chicago means, what Central Illinois means, what Western Illinois, Southern Illinois, Eastern Illinois. So I remember early in those phone calls when I was talking to some downstate coaches, I talked about the balance of recruiting downstate versus Chicago, and then when I'm talking to Chicago area coaches about recruiting downstate, because it is 2 kind of separate entities. We have 3 main recruiters up in the Chicagoland area, and then my other 7 coaches take care of the rest of the state, and there's been an added importance on taking care of their specific area. But if a kid's an in-state player, whether it be from Chicagoland or anywhere else, it's a team effort with our staff, right? Like geographically, when we go into Jersey, Coach Boo takes Jersey, right? But when we're recruiting a tight end, it's a Coach Boo and a tight ends coach. But when you're in Illinois, it's kind of all of us. So when we get good news from Illinois players, it's kind of a rallying point around the whole office. And it's been something that we've said from day one and hopefully continues forward.
Brandon, when we talked after the first day of the training camp, you mentioned how you and Tony had challenged him, to be more vocal, be more of a leader that way. Just, I guess, in 3 weeks, have you just seen him take that even more?
Yeah, VP is, I would say 3 things, right? So when I get here, all you know is what you've seen on film, right? So I've seen on film, been able to process that. And then as I got to know him, he's a guy that you have to engage, right? You have to engage and kind of draw it out of him. And one of the things that I kind of flipped on him during the course of spring, summer, and now into fall was, why don't you be the engager? Why don't you be the guy that grabs it forward? And even when we voted for captains, he received a significant number of votes offensively. And then the way we do it, our defensive coaches or defensive players vote for 1 offensive guy, our offensive guys vote for 1 defense, and then 2 on their respective side of the ball. He received a lot of crossover votes. So that began to tell me that people other than the people that were in the huddle with him were talking to him and are talking about him or feeling good about him. So he's made some strides, but the real test is going to come Saturday, right? Hopefully the strides that he's made off the field carry on the field, and I definitely know on the field he's made some nice strides as well.
I guess in that regard, where have you seen this, maybe just from a fresh slate when you got here, just to now in terms of going out there and leading your offense?
Yeah, volume reflects confidence, right? So if you speak loudly and efficiently, then people are going to believe you, right? So volume was a huge factor for us when we're trying to talk to him about on-the-field communication. And then, BP's got a really live arm, right? If you truly sit down and watch him throw, pregame warm-ups, pat and go, whatever it is, I mean, he has a pretty special arm. I've been in the NFL for 3 years, and I would say he has that type of caliber arm, just as far as 10-yard out route to a 60-yard, post. He has all of the throws. It's just whether or not he can make them to the right person, right, at the right time in the right situation. So he's done a lot of really good things. I give Tony a lot of credit, and I give our players around him a lot of credit as well.
You're able to sit down and just kind of dissect Nebraska with 4 guys on defense that have called defenses at the college level. How much of a benefit is that for you and your staff?
Well, obviously Ryan's the only guy that I offered the defense coordinator title to. Interviewed a few guys, but he was the guy that stood out from day one and has probably reinforced that decision 100 times over to where we are today. He's just got, incredible perspective. I think he relates well with our players, but the thing that's probably impressed me the most with Ryan is when I brought these coaches forward to him, right? Like I knew Kevin Kane, I knew Andy Boo, I knew Terrence Jamison, I knew Aaron Henry. I never at one point said, hey, hire this guy. Like I said, just let's interview him, right? Let's interview these guys and see what you think. And he'd come back and he's like, Coach, this is awesome. And Sunday night, I was just in my office reviewing some stuff, and I was going through some notes that he had actually handed me a week prior And one of those things that he had made written to me, I asked everybody to kind of take a look after 2 weeks of camp and say, what have I done well? What have I not done well? What can we do well in the future? And one of the comments from him was how much he enjoyed this staff and the volume of experience that it brings him as a defensive coordinator. And that just spoke volumes to me about how he's selfless and he's not really in the moment of on the defensive coordinator. He's more in the moment of we're the Illinois defense, right? And that kind of said a big statement to me.
Both Tony and Ryan today talks about sort of the collaborative process that went into defining what maybe the Illinois offense and defense would be. Was that unique for you, or had you had coaching staffs like that before?
I think as a coach you evolve, right? Whether you're an assistant, as a coordinator, as a head coach, you evolve every day. I'm a little bit different from a head coach now at 51 than I was at 35, 36. I think the part that really has helped me is seeing other coaches since I've moved on from the head coaching experience. 2 years in or 3 years in the NFL, two different head coaches, but also just the perspective of what's worked in the past. It's just a different layout. When I took over Wisconsin, I was the defense coordinator, and I worked with Paul Christ as the offensive coordinator. He and I used to compete every day, on a football field, but it was never in that head coach coordinator role. So when I stepped into that role, he and I had several conversations, but it was more along the lines of, hey, this is what you've done, this is what I'd like to see us continue to do, and how can I help you get there, right? And then I transitioned when Paul took the head job at Pitt to Matt Canada, who's now the head offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? So we had success that year, won another Big Ten championship. And then at Arkansas, I had two coordinators there, right? So I have constantly evolved in offensive football and then also defensively, just I think learning from past mistakes and listening to others. So I appreciate what both of them have said. I've said from day one, I didn't want to just have somebody come in and throw down a manual or a playbook and say, this is what we're running. I want to run this together, and that's what we tried to do.
Coach Walters mentioned that the defense that he's been able to put together is something that he's never done before. And like previous films, help. How much fun was it for you guys to be able to put this defense together from scratch and kind of slot guys in different places?
It has been a lot of fun. I'm not gonna, from December 19th when I, came here, or when I took the job until where we are today, it's been a constant evolution, right? Just the way things were laid out. Because of COVID, I wasn't able to go out and recruit, but I was able to stay here on campus, and I literally would just bring in a different coach every day. And first came TP, then Bart, and then I switched to the defensive side and I hired Ryan. And as you staggered all of those hires, it seemed like we were probably hiring 50 people, but I just wanted to give every guy a chance to get named, and it kind of came to a summation. I believe it was 2 weeks ago Friday. I believe it was about 11:30, 11:45 at night, and I came out of my office and I was going to walk down to Pat's office, and I just heard this music coming from the defensive staff room, and I came around the corner, and they had some beats going in there, and it was just like there was like 8 people in this little defensive staff room, and they're just like high energy. Everybody's they're filling out a prep for tomorrow's practice, and I'm like saying to myself, like, how many people can do that at 11:45 at the end of 2.5 weeks of camp? I think we got something here, and I think our players feel it. There's a natural camaraderie that happens. We did a routine run tackle drill, which was a pass from a quarterback to a receiver. A receiver then had to run a gauntlet, and he got a two-way tackle. So we were demonstrating that, and I had Tony Peterson throw the ball to Gio, and then Gio ran the play, and then he got 2 close angle tackles, one from Coach Kane and another one from Ryan Walters, and the whole place went like I was just doing a routine play, right, kind of demonstrated, and our players just went crazy. And then I showed that in film the next day, and I let the players critique it, which was pure pandemonium. Now it's not just all funs and giggles, but that part really kind of summed it up for me.
What have you seen on the film about the Nebraska offense that might present some challenges?
Yeah, obviously Martinez is a very gifted player, very creative. Going back over the last couple of years, he's a player that's been recognized now as a captain. He's only 3-time captain in Nebraska history. Think about that. Regardless of their record, their history, the last 3 years, he's been a guy that's been a mainstay for them. So obviously he has the eyes and ears not only of his players but of his coaches. I think offensively they have some big bodies up front that although they may not have a lot of career starts, they've got good experience. They're long, they're athletic. whoever comes, I think running back is the unknown commodity, right? Have a lot of different options that are in there. Tight end, a couple proven players. I think the biggest thing we're going to have the challenge of obviously early games, is to make sure that we're playing well. And then obviously we got to match their offensive play. And on the flip side of the ball, defensively, just have a lot of respect for several of their players. Played a lot of football. JoJo Doman, who's one of their premier players, his dad and I have known each other since I've been 22 years old, right? So I've known JoJo since he's been a small young man. So there's a lot of ties to that defense side of the ball. Chenander, who is their defense coordinator, played at Iowa when I was there. So there's all kinds of ties to that moment, but I'm excited for the opportunity.
I asked Coach Walters the same thing, that how important is it that you get off to a fast start in this game on both sides of the ball, just from a confidence standpoint?
Well, it's always important to start fast, play from ahead, sort of. But I would say this, right? Like one of the things I appreciated about our captains when I announced them, I let them kind of say a few words to the team, and two of them made reference to, listen, this has all been great, right? Camp has been good. Everybody likes each other, a lot of good things. But at some point, adversity is going to slap us in the face, right? And when that happens, that's when big people have to step up. And don't know who it's going to be, when it's going to be, or how it's going to come about. But we have to have someone step up when adversity strikes, and that's going to be important.
Brett, how are you framing this game with your players? Because it's a spotlight game, the only game in the nation. It's your debut. Nebraska's got its whatever. How do you frame it with your players?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective because one of my big mantras is 1-0, right? To take care of every game just one day at a time, and then you work your way to the next opportunity. I think that our players have bought into that. They obviously have been focused on Nebraska since clear back to December and January, but even going through the spring, going through early fall camp, I was very clear to them, before we can learn how to beat Nebraska, we have to play Illinois football and what that means. And our results of Saturday are going to be hopefully a direct reflection of how well Illinois football plays Illinois football. And that allows us then to go into UTSA the next week, regardless of what happens in week one, and have a chance to be successful. It allows us, to go on the road at Virginia in our first road game, right? A non-conference game that, is going to allow us to focus on just playing Illinois football at Virginia. So I get the question, but we're not a red letter game team, right? Like there isn't anything that we overemphasize. We got to beat this team over this team. We've had 12 given opportunities, and how we respond to those 12 will define our success.
This is not the first season opener for you, and not your first time debuting as a head coach, but what are the emotions you carry into it?
I'm sure they'll be different on Saturday, but it's just more of the anticipation, the excitement. Saturday we were 1 week out, but then Sunday was really our first day of game week preparation. Today is a day off for our players, but it's been fun to just kind of engage with our coaches. Just talked to OC. He wants to come over and watch the film with me at 8 o'clock, right? So it's just like any other day for me. And then we'll go through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday preparation. There are some logistical things that, from an NCAA standpoint, you're allowed 20 hours a week. So I've structured those probably a little bit different than what they've done in the past. In the past, they came over in the morning and then came back over in the afternoon. We do it all in the morning. On Fridays, they used to work out in the morning. We're going to work out in the afternoon. So there's some things that, I realize changes for them. So we've been kind of slowly building that through. But as a head coach, I got to be ahead, right? Like the reason we practiced those night games was because we're going to play UTSA and Maryland and some games at night that we have to be prepared for. So I just constantly got to be ahead of the curve.
A lot of sense, but this bond you talk about, coaches to players, players to players, is there a balance between not forcing that to try to create it versus letting it happen organically?
Yeah, I do think that you can't force anything on today's youth, right? Like they're going to come about it. They're going to be naturally guarded. I think young men today, a lot in our society, are people that have been told one thing. A lot of times something else happens. So just like when I stood in front of them that first day, they didn't know me from Adam. All I said is, here I am. Let's get to know each other. And I would say, there's been moments of high stress, but also been moments of a lot of levity and a lot of fun. I think that's just building and growing in a relationship. But I know this, walking off that field on Saturday, we'll know a lot about who we are by the actions of our four quarters and how we react to moments of adversity as well as success.
Like playing a Big Ten game to start out the season, would you rather play a lower level team? Ideally, how would you script that?
Yeah, so my mind's a little jacked up, right? Like I never think of somebody as a lower level, but I appreciate the question. I think the part that makes me have resolve is Nebraska is a B1G opponent from the West, right? So they're a divisional opponent. That's a big deal, right? So we've talked since last spring. I gave them comparison values of, the two teams that have won the 5 last Big Ten West titles have been very successful at home in conference games. So they knew that right away. It was actually one of the first things they mentioned when we talked about team goals. But I would also, add that the importance of the Nebraska game isn't any less significant than the last game against Northwestern, right? Like that's scheduled on our schedule. They're all important, and if we begin to favor one over the other, we'll kind of get out of balance in a certain way. I would say that, this was going to be a game in Ireland, right? Which sounds awesome, and there's an opportunity to possibly do that in the future. But to open up in Memorial Stadium at 12 o'clock, first game of college football. I know our numbers keep growing every day in ticket sales. Like, hopefully we can pack this thing as full as we can make it. The student section was unbelievable the other night, having 8,000 students out here, the biggest crowd they've ever had in a long time. If we can get, if we got over 50,000 students, it doesn't take a math major long to figure out. We get everybody here, we're going to be in good shape. But I think the Champaign-Urbana community, Central Illinois, Chicago, downstate, if we can show up in numbers, I think it'll be something we can all celebrate.
Has there been, with the return of students coming back to campus, obviously COVID's still going on, has there been conversations with players just to remind them?
Absolutely. Yeah, so
yes, they're vaccinated, but they're still,
100%. So I would say even going back to 2 weekends ago when they, began to matriculate in, and we knew people were starting to show up. Moving day, right? That it happens a few weeks out from the start of school, but then even going back to, we had a mock game on Friday and kind of shared with them, obviously you're going to be entering into dormitories, into apartment buildings. You're going to be around people that maybe don't have the same level of commitment to a group of people that other people on campus might have, right? Because, if we protect one another, right, and I think we've been trying to sell that to our guys. I think that's why you saw so many of our guys get vaccinated, is obviously they're trying to protect themselves, but they're trying to protect their teammates. And also, if they're not out there, then they're obviously hurting. If they're a starter and they can't be out there, that's 10 other guys you've let down on the field, but also an entire sideline. So I couldn't be more pleased. And again, this goes back to, Josh and his athletic department's decisions on what they did last year. And then, Lovey, I will say this, right? Like, to come in last year and realize they had no games canceled due to COVID when everybody else was. And then as an athletic department, to have no contest canceled because of COVID, it just speaks volumes of what this place is all about.
Different things. I talked to Jake and Lane on Media Day about just the unique opportunity of them being able to play together. The 6-year gap, never really been able to play together. So I'm sure you close brothers in the past, but what have you seen? How have you seen them interact?
I think it's typical big brother, little brother. I was little brother to 2 big brothers that made me feel it every day. I think there's a little bit of that going on. Jake is such an alpha, right? Such a dominant male in our building. It's probably unique for his little brother to say that's my brother, that everybody kind of, when Jake speaks, people listen, right? And I think as coaches, we've been even beyond impressed about just his leadership qualities and his traits. Jake is a really good football player who has high football IQ, great communication skills, will be a guy that'll have a chance to play at the next level. And because of that, when you're an incoming non-scholarship snapper, all right, that happens to be his brother, it's a hard road to walk. But I try to say something to Lane every day, but believe me, Lane doesn't need any pick-me-up. I mean, he can carry his weight pretty good. It's fun to watch it. And I have had a lot of brothers that have had success, right? Started with the Watt brothers. 3 of those guys are in the NFL. And when I was at Arkansas, I had the Henry boys that I think 2 or 3 of those will be in the NFL eventually. One of them's already in there. So that's been a fun part of the coaching tree. Those genetics usually do add up.
You mentioned a couple times about trying to connect with students. I guess Sights and Sounds was probably your first time really getting to do that. What was that moment like for you?
It was awesome. Obviously, Cassie Arner and her staff had told us about it. Made the suggestion that that I'd bring some of our student athletes, and I knew I was going to be voting on captain, so I knew it was going to be their first chance to be out there. And we didn't have time for everybody to talk, so basically TA, Tony Adams, and Blake were the designated 2 guys to speak, and they rocked it. All of them kind of introduced themselves, but it gave me an insight into our student body in a big way, but also the connection immediately with our players to the students, right? I mean, it's genuine, it's real. They're going to share a degree, right? They're going to share going to class, and then just to see the energy in that crowd. I think they kind of had the same moment I did. Like, it had been at least a year since they had seen a stadium like that. I mean, that whole bottom level, 8,000 people were there. Everybody was wearing orange, right? And it was just one of those moments, like, you could just know how special this could be. So if you're sitting at home trying to decide if you want to play, come to the game here on Saturday or watch it on TV, if you want to help us, I'm telling you, like, to have that stadium full is going to be a huge, huge opportunity for this program.
You guys have spoken highly of Isaiah. What gives you so much confidence in a kid who's going to a position for the first time?
Isaiah Williams? Yeah. Isaiah is, he's just kind of one of those kids, and I'm sure you guys get it too. Even though he's a quiet demeanor, he walks in with extreme confidence. You feel him when he walks into a room, and then just his, I think his level to adapt quickly. Because of a quarterback, he's got high football IQ. He's got big time ability to relate and understand concepts quickly. Understands defenses because he's been studying them. So I think his learning curve will be really, really quick. He's got incredible feet. He had a one-on-one day that was pretty impressive just to sit back and watch. I understand why all those programs offered him as a wide receiver coming out of high school. He's a very special gifted player.
All good? Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it.